What advice would I have about finding a balance between work, home, and community involvement? Wow, that's a big one. And it's individual. Every person has to answer it for themselves, and that's not a cop-out. That's just the way it is. And I think that at the very bottom of the problem solving on that one is you have to decide who you are. You have to know who you want to be. So many of us women in higher ed are struggling for recognition, struggling to climb whatever ladder it is that we're on, and recognize that we have to sacrifice many things. And that's a fact. If you want to spend time one place, you're not spending it somewhere else. So I think that all of us have to be empowered to ask ourselves what's really important to us as women, as family members, as friends, and to build from there the path that we want to take. For me, it was always important to have a good balance. I went home at 5 o'clock usually. I have lots of colleagues who were here until 9 o'clock at night, lots of nights, if not most nights. But I found a way to do what I needed to do during the time that I was here so that I was able to be a mom and a wife and a friend and have more to myself than just what the University of Cincinnati had to offer. And I always had a lot of other things going on. I had fun. I think most women nowadays work so hard sometimes they forget to have fun. So that's something else I think is really important. Community service, some of us will do that and some of us won't. And if those of us who don't, we shouldn't make them feel bad about not doing it. There's not necessarily room for everything. And the balance is between who I want to be and who I'm actually allowing myself to be. That's the true balance. Now, what is one characteristic every leader should possess and want? Courage, I think, is really important. You have to have the courage of your convictions. Again, if you go back to my strong belief that you have to know who you are and you really don't want to violate who you are. You have to be true to yourself. That takes a lot of courage in today's environment, especially when in leadership positions in universities, you're most always answering to someone else. Now, if you are a faculty member going through the ranks within your discipline, you're answering to your reappointment, promotion, and tenure committees. But that's a negotiated kind of a life. You've got some impact in that. But I think more in administrative positions and in staff positions, you're always answering to someone who is your boss. And there are always going to be times when you have to make some rather tough decisions about, can I do what's being asked of me? And I think if you're a woman who ventures into an administrative position, a leadership position, actually anyone, not just women, but you've got to be prepared to say, I respect that that's what you need me to do, but I'm not really going to be able to do that. That may come once in a lifetime when you really have to have that kind of a tough sort of a response to something. But you've got to know who you are, and you've got to respect who you are. And administration can sometimes test that. What advice would I give someone going into a leadership position for the very first time? Don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Don't be afraid to say, I will look into that. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to respect people that you're not particularly fond of. Don't be afraid to ask anything that you need to ask to learn what your job is. And as you're taking that job, ask those questions up to the boss. I think one of the most important things that anyone really has to do when they're taking a leadership position, and in this world, in many cases, that's an administrative position, is you have to say, what are your expectations of me? Let's get that clear. And what I found a lot of times is that expectations are not clear at all. Many times positions are created because there's a need in an area. But, okay, so let's get somebody to work in that area. What's that person supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to fix it or make it happen or move it forward. What does that mean? I think that when you're contemplating taking an administrative position, you should spend a lot of time on the front end saying, what does this mean? What do you want me to do? What are your expectations? How will you evaluate me? How will you know if I'm effective in doing what it is you've asked of me? I have found that when you do that, and it can be very challenging, especially when the person that you're talking to doesn't know the answers to those questions. It can be very challenging, but when you know those things, you don't have quite so many surprises come about you.